big remarks that are now coming in post the Supreme Court's observation in the petitions challenging the constitutional validity of the new Waqf Act. In the latest, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has made a strong worded remark on the powers of the Supreme Court, stating that there cannot be a situation in a democracy where the courts direct the president. Because do remember, the new Waqf Act has been passed both in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha before meeting this kind of a judicial scrutiny. It has also received the president's assent, and this is where this particular comment from Mr. Jagdeep Dhankar comes in. The vice president saying that there cannot be a situation in a democracy where the courts are directing the president. I want to go across to CNN News 18's Pallavi Ghosh, who joins us with more details. Pallavi, what do you make of this? You know, while there are many critics of the new Waqf Act who are already resorting to celebratory reactions and saying that this is why we stand validated today and we have our faiths in the courts of the nation still. A very strong worded comment coming in from Vice President Dhankar.
Yes, of late there has been a lot of skirmish, which, if I can use that word, between the judiciary on one hand and the executive and the legislature on the other, while the government ministers have been more or less very guarded when they come to commenting on the working of the judiciary. But certainly there seems to be a kind of wariness even within the government that is this a case of now a judicial overreach. I think the Vice President in that sense has voiced many of the concerns and the outrage within the government as well. He's talking in multiple contexts on the Justice Verma cash hall case. He made the point that judicial integrity is something which has to be seen as non-negotiable. Apart from that, his comments where he talks about in the recent context of the Supreme Court verdict, which gives a timeline of around 3 months for the President to notify any bill which comes to her for notification. That is a question which is being asked by the Vice President. Who are they to dictate to us what the President of India should do? He makes a reference to Article 142. The Article 142 of the Constitution gives the right to the judiciary as a part of check and balance system to come out with any verdict which it deems fit is important to protect the Constitution. That is what the Vice President of India is saying, that you cannot have unfettered rights being given to a judiciary. It has to work in a synchronization, and I think his comments are very, very significant in the context of the Supreme Court verdict on the deadline being given to a president, and also even as that hearing on the Waqf Board amendment bill is going on the basis of multiple petitions.
Now, these comments that have been made by the Vice President, Pallavi, are they in direct relation to what we're hearing from the Supreme Court? Just a short while ago, we were breaking down all those legal updates coming in from the top court as far as pleas challenging the constitutional validity of the new Waqf Act are concerned, or is it a generic comment and right now we're just viewing it with that prism, given that this is a big update indeed and a development that the centre is watching out for closely?
Well, I would see the timing is, is too much to be thought of just as a mere coincidence. I mean, he was speaking inside the Vice President's residence today. He was addressing a young gathering. And it's in that context, even as the hearing was going on in the Supreme Court, this comment was made by the Vice President of India. Obviously, there was no direct reference to the Waqf bill, but clearly that was also a part of his indication, because this is a question which many in the government also keep on asking, that why is it if something which has got the stamp of the Parliament of India, which also has been notified by the President of India, which the Waqf bill has, why does the judiciary have to start commenting on every legislation which has been cleared by the Parliament and approved by the President of India? So, the context immediately may have been Justice Verma, the Supreme Court's observations on the deadline to the President of India, but I would also read this as a kind of a comment or a response what was happening in the Supreme Court yesterday and today on the Waqf bill.
Yes. Pallavi, what's interesting is, and this particular comment of the Vice President takes me back to what was opined by the Supreme Court bench when it was hearing the matter yesterday. It spoke of how normally when this kind of a legislation, is already seeing the nod by the parliamentarians, the Supreme Court or the judiciary doesn't normally want to interfere. But in this very case, it spoke of the Waqf by user provision and said how getting away with it or doing away with completely could have grave consequences or ramifications.
Well, the whole idea of the three pillars of democracy as a part of a constitution is precisely this, that there should be a check and balance system as far as the executive, the judiciary and the legislature is concerned. They all check and balance each other out. But this is, I think, a perennial debate about where should there be a Lakshman Rekha. How much of this check is actually acceptable? There have been legislations which have been heard multiple times, they've been tweaked, and that is the point which the executive and the legislature asked, that if it has got the stamp of approval from the Parliament of India and the President of India, who goes through the entire legislation before giving his or her approval, why should it again go back to judicial for judicial review? Why should so many multiple petitions be allowed, where every political party is going to construe the observations also of the Supreme Court as they want to deem fit? I mean, you've seen, for example, how the opposition parties today are reading the observation and the so-called 1 week reprieve where the government is going to give its response. So this is a confrontation, which is why this entire idea of NJAC is also being spoken about by many within the government as well, that we really need to have to step up this whole issue about the appointment of the judiciary and the judges as well. We have to work in not in confrontation, but in close coordination, which is clearly not happening.
Do you think, Pallavi, this comment is also coming from the Vice President, given that there's a sense that we get from the central government as well, that all of these questions, these concerns have been addressed during the JPC. Members have brainstormed it in detail. All of those discussions have already taken place. So why these kind of concerns, or given to critics for that matter, when it comes to a legislation that has seen clear nod by the parliamentarians in this case?
Well, not just the government or the Vice President, the Prime Minister too said it at the Rising Bharat even, that it was not a knee-jerk legislation. It was something which should have ideally happened long time back, and it was waiting to happen. But we went through multiple steps of checks and balances as well as far as the passage of this bill is concerned, going through the cabinet, going through the JPC with multiple meetings, with the JPC members also travelling to many parts of the country. And all those people who are going to be affected by the legislation, they were discussed with, they were consulted with. And that is when the Parliament, which early in the morning actually cleared this legislation. So they are not buying this argument of the opposition parties, or even while the hearing was going on of the councils for the opposition parties on the multiple petitions, that this was a knee-jerk legislation. That's the stand which is coming from the government. But if you want to conquer in the context of, what the Vice President of India has said, he himself is someone who's been from the judiciary. He's a legal luminary himself. So he understands the nuances. Today he's a part of the executive, but he understands the nuances of the judiciary. So what he is saying is, I would say, very indicative and also very, very significant.
Here's what I find particularly interesting, Pallavi, and this is what has been said by the Vice President. He said, and I quote, "The Constitution of India has accorded immunity from prosecution only to the Honourable President and the Honourable Governors." And here's where the assent by the President comes into play. What's also interesting is, through the course of the hearing in the Supreme Court yesterday, do remember how Solicitor General Tushar Mehta also put up all those arguments to counter the Waqf by user provision, to counter the inclusion or the criticism that came in for the inclusion of non-Muslims as well. So each and every aspect has at every step of the way been countered by the central government.
Well, I think there's a sense of affront within the government and also among the Vice President's words which we hear today. Whenever we play out that soundbite, or we may have played out that soundbite, the affront is that here you're dragging in the President of India. You're telling the Governor or the President of India that there's a 3-month deadline, and this is by when you have to give your notification. The counter which is often coming from within the government sources and also from the Vice President seems to indicate is that this is something which cannot be hurried through. There are petitions, there are legislations which lie on the table of the President or the Governor of a particular state, depending upon the situation, and they also take legal opinion. I mean, for example, if a bill is going to a President of India, she may be consulting legal experts and before she gives her consent, because at the end of the day, she would not want something on which she's given a stamp or signature on to be open to judicial review. And therefore that sense of affront within the Vice President, when he said that who gives that right, he makes a reference to Article 142, which gives that right to the Supreme Court to come out with a verdict against a rule or a law if it feels it's important to protect the Constitution.
This interesting. It's interesting what we're hearing from the Vice President. It's a sticky wicket indeed. There are many who've also spoken of several checks and balances, in the sense that judiciary is one such check and balance in the country. So which side of this line do you stand is what it comes down to, I think, at the end of the day. Pallavi, let's take in an expert opinion on this. We have Advocate Vineet Jindal joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Jindal, the Vice President has come out with strong statements. We are speaking at a time that we've heard from the Supreme Court yesterday and today come out express concerns with regards to certain provisions of the new Waqf Act. Now the President has come out to ask, why are we finding ourselves in a situation in a democracy today where the courts are directing the President? What do you make of this comment first up?
Yes, to some extent, the Honorable Vice President says correctly, because there are certain limits for everyone. No, once when talking about the direction which is given to the judgment, in which it has been specifically stated that the 3 months' time would be taken for some decision by the governors in respect of any law, any bill. So
okay.
I think there always been...
Okay. Appreciate you joining us, Mr. Jindal, but I'm going to have to interrupt you there. Congress's Manish Tiwari joins us on the broadcast as well. Mr. Manish Tiwari, if you've heard from the Vice President, the big comment that's come in from him on judiciary and how it must operate in a democracy, what are your first thoughts on the same?
Well, it's unfortunate that the Vice President of India has made such a comment. The President of India is a creature of the Constitution, and so is the Vice President. And under the constitutional scheme, the courts, and especially the Supreme Court, has been given the powers to interpret the Constitution and lay down the rule of law. So therefore, the Supreme Court, when it acts under Article 142, it acts to do substantial and absolute and total justice. So therefore, under those circumstances, if the Supreme Court has correctly said that governors cannot keep bills pending, for as long as they desire, it's an absolutely correct law which they have laid down. And so therefore, the office of the governor cannot be misutilized in order to trample upon the constitutional rights of the states. The office of the governor cannot be weaponized in order to trample on federalism. And I'm surprised that the Vice President of India has taken umbrage to a judgment of the Supreme Court which is absolutely correct on law.
Mr. Tiwari, wouldn't you then agree to the fact that the bill having had the stamp of the Parliament is also a constitutional process in itself? Yeah,
but obviously, so a bill passed by the Assembly, can the governor sit on it for as long as he desires or wishes? Is that not frustrating the will of the people of the state? Ultimately, a bill is not passed by a government. It is passed by a legislative assembly, which represents the sovereign will of the people, or for that matter, even the parliament. So no bill.
Mr. Jagdeep Dhankar, Mr. Manish Tiwari has not spoken of any one instance directly, but what he said is that there cannot be a situation in a democracy where the courts are directing the president, and it comes at a very interesting time when we've heard back-to-back on 2 days from the Supreme Court come out with very interesting observations around some of the provisions that it does not agree to as far as the amended Waqf Act is concerned.
Well, who says that the courts cannot direct the government, including the President of India? Hasn't Article 356 on many occasions been struck down by the President of by the courts? Were those notifications not issued by the President of India or in the name of the President of India? So where is this jurisprudence coming from that the courts cannot direct the President of India or a governor to act in a particular manner or not act in a particular manner? The courts are the custodian of the interpretation of laws, and also that government and the legislature should follow the constitution.
The constitution of JPC was a demand of those who were opposing the law to begin with, opposing the amendments to begin with. Now we've seen that process being followed, and the government is saying that we've done everything that was being asked of us. and then it is that the amended bill was put through both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. It was taken up for discussion and consideration, following which we saw the bill see the light of the day. How do you respond to those comments that have come in from the government?
Wasn't the NJAC struck down by the Supreme Court? The NJAC was not only passed unanimously by both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, except for one abstention, that was the late Mr. Ram Jethmalani, ratified by 15 states. Did the Supreme Court not strike it down?
Right.
Are other laws which have not been struck down as ultra vires of the Constitution? So what is this new kind of jurisprudence that the Vice President is creating?
What I do want to understand from you, Mr. Tiwari, is also, wouldn't this then end up being an unending cycle? You have the Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha take it up for consideration. We've seen this new act shape up in the way it has. Now it's passing or being scrutinized judicially. The central government is going to come up with its own set of strategy perhaps going forward. It's going to be an unending cycle, I'm afraid. How would you respond to that?
Well, I don't know as to how you've traversed from Article 142 to the JPC and now to a particular bill, which I don't even know which bill are you talking about. So can you be more specific? What bill are you talking about?
I'm talking about the new Waqf Act.
So that's under consideration. That is under adjudication in the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. A law is kosher on the touchstone of constitutionality. And once the Supreme Court speaks, that is where it ends. It doesn't end with Parliament. It doesn't end with the President of India. It ends with the Supreme Court. That's the constitutional scheme.
Okay, before I let you go, Mr. Tiwari, last question to you. How do you read into the Supreme Court's observations? No, sir. I'm just requesting you to respond to this one question that I have for you, which is, how do you respond to the Supreme Court's observations? 3 important aspects were flagged by the Supreme Court yesterday, and the tone of tenor of the Supreme Court appears to have reached the central government in a way that they are needing more time to come up with a detailed response.
Well, it's not appropriate to offer a running commentary on what the Supreme Court is saying while it is adjudicating a matter. Courts, when they adjudicate, they obviously reach out to the councils and try and elicit as much of information as possible in order to help them make up their minds. This is the normal judicial practice. So the matter is sub judice. It's going to be heard. I think it'll be heard on Thursday, or it was supposed to be heard today, if I'm not mistaken. Right? And let the matter be heard. Let the court come to its own conclusion.
The matter was heard today, and a 7 days timeline has been set up for the central government to file a detailed response, as was being sought. But thank you, Mr. Tiwari. Thank you. Appreciate you taking out your time and sharing your thoughts with us. I want to go across to BJP's Tom Vadakkan, who's through with us as well. Mr. Vadakkan, how do you look at this? The Congress says that it is in complete disagreement to the Vice President's comment that judiciary must be kept separate, and if at all the new Waqf law is a matter that is sub judice, we welcome it with open arms.
Well, the question of being sub judice and having said everything about it is very strange. Let me say this in the beginning. The Vice President has raised issues which are out in public mind, and that need to be settled. He's asked, there is no immunity to the judiciary, is the line he has taken. And there has been what has been seen on television across the country of burned currency. Where did it come from? Where was it going? These are questions at large. Vice President has said this, that investigation, we need to get to the bottom of it, because this is the question that will affect the judiciary, because here is something that you need to address it. And if you do not address it, your credibility gets affected. And when your credibility gets affected, the nation is worried. So it is important at this juncture to investigate that matter and not put it under the carpet. Now, as to the other question of Vice President raising issues about the President and the Governor, very valid question. Here is the judiciary outreach into areas which was very unknown, that they would give a timeline for the President of India. Consultation process is always there. And when you have a consultation process, it takes time. And that time is something which is part of democracy. But you want to give the President of India a timeline. And that is something that is not acceptable. And, there may be certain powers they are entitled to, but that also needs to have a relook in the larger question of examining the role of the judiciary.
Okay, all right. Mr. Varakan, now here's what the Vice President has said, and I'm going to reiterate that for our viewers who are tuning in. He said there cannot be a situation in a democracy where the courts direct the President. My question to you, while citing this particular remark, is it's a strong worded comment, but comes at a very interesting time. The Supreme Court has been hearing petitions challenging the new Waqf Act. The Congress, we just spoke to Mr. Manish Tiwari, was of the opinion that this is also very much part of the checks and balances that a democracy offers.
Checks and balance should exist, no denial. But checks and balance does not mean overreach. Checks and balance doesn't mean you can get into the, the shoes of the executive. There is a law that is forward-looking, that was for all the communities, whether it was the Muslims, Hindus, Christians. Affected villages were claimed by the Waqf Board. And who created the Waqf Board? 1954, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, after partition. Now that started the appeasement process. When you start, it's a statutory body.
Sorry for that interruption. But we've seen it in the past. For instance, in the case of the NGAC Act, we've seen the Supreme Court strike it down.
Well, Supreme Court is within its right to strike it down. The executive is in its right to set up laws which are in the interest of the people. These are elected people. These are selected people. You have a difference there. Selected people and elected people. Let's get that very clear. The power of the people is in Parliament. The lawmakers are in Parliament. So it is important that the lawmakers are not sidelined by overreaching power of the judiciary.
Okay, many thanks, Mr. Varakan. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us here on CNN News 18. To put this entire story in perspective, we need to go back and revisit the Vice President's comments on judiciary and the possible consequences of it overpowering the executive. Listen in.
My worries were at a very highest level. I never thought in my life I will have the occasion to see it. President of India is a very elevated position. President takes oath to preserve, protect and defend the Constitution. This oath is taken only by President and her appointees, the governors. Everyone, the Prime Minister, the Vice President, the ministers, the parliamentarians, the judges, they take oath to abide by the Constitution. But to defend the Constitution, to preserve the Constitution, to protect the Constitution, that is the oath of the President of India. The Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. Boys and girls, if you look at the Indian Constitution, when Parliament is defined, according to you, Parliament is Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. No. Parliament, the first part is the President. Second and third are Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. There is a directive to the President by a recent judgment. Where are we heading? What is happening in the country? We have to be extremely sensitive. It is not a question of someone filing a review or not. We never bargained for democracy for this day. President being called upon to decide in a time-bound manner, and if not, becomes law. So we have judges who will legislate, who will perform executive functions, who will act as super parliament, and absolutely have no accountability because law of the land does not apply to them. Let me tell you, boys and girls, every parliamentarian, and why parliamentarian? Every candidate in any election to assembly or parliament is required to declare assets.
Well, these strong remarks from the Vice President come at a very interesting time. We're seeing the Supreme Court already set a deadline for the President and the governors to decide on a bill. Let's not forget be the ongoing hearing at the Supreme Court as far as the new Waqf Act is concerned. Heading into a very short break with that, lots more lined up when we return. Keep watching.
Возможность, и вы имеете возможность общаться между собой. Но, к сожалению, нет вашего отца с вами. Ну, сейчас ни в коем случае не хочу давать никаких политических оценок тем событиям, которые происходят. Но все, что с вами произошло, это большая беда. А то, что удалось вам оказаться на свободе, это результат того, что у России стабильные многолетние отношения с палестинским народом, с его представителями, самыми разными организациями. И думаю, нужно выразить слова благодарности руководству, политическому крылу Хамас за то, что они пошли нам навстречу и совершили вот этот акт, гуманитарный акт, вас освободили. Я вас как раз с этим и хочу поздравить. Надежда на то, что все люди, которые находятся в том положении, в котором
прежде всего поблагодарить вас лично и все российское правительство.
Разумеется, мы будем делать все для того, чтобы подобные акты совершались как можно чаще, и чтобы все люди, которые еще находятся в таких условиях, в которых вы провели столько много времени, чтобы они тоже были освобождены.
Внук был в плену. Очень тяжелый период. Российской Федерации в Израиле, посол России Анатолий Дмитриевич Виктора во время боевых действий и попала в плен к нацистам и смогла бежать.
Благодарен очень за ваши действия, личные действия, чтобы мы вышли на свободу. И я тоже хочу сказать, что для меня это очень-очень важно в этом моменте, еще все остальные наружники тоже вышли на свободу, потому что я знаю, как они чувствуют, я знаю, чего они, как это там, как это тяжело, как они кричали. И для меня они как братья. Для меня как будто, когда они там, это как будто пол моего сердца еще там в Газе, как будто мне очень будет трудно вернуться к моей жизни, нормальной жизни, каждое время, что они там. Даже во время трудностей ваша поддержка очень важна.
Действительно, будем работать обязательно.
Я вас очень прошу, чтобы продолжали делать все, что вы делали для меня и все этого. И я знал, что вы делали очень много, чтобы они тоже могли быть на свободе и быть счастливы, как я сейчас счастлив, когда сижу рядом с моей семьей, с моими людьми, что я очень люблю. Это для меня очень-очень важно.
Все возможно. Я говорил маме, что не только молитва,
имеем возможность, и вы имеете возможность общаться между собой. Ну, к сожалению, нет вашего отца с вами. Ну, сейчас ни в коем случае не хочу давать никаких политических оценок тем событиям, которые происходят. Но все, что с вами произошло, это большая беда. Но то, что удалось вам оказаться на свободе, это результат того, что у России стабильные многолетние отношения с палестинским народом, с его представителями, самыми разными организациями.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned. You're watching Nation at 5, shifting our attention to more we're tracking from Tamil Nadu. This is with regards to the derogatory misogynist remarks made by Foreign Minister Ponmudi. In the latest, we're learning that after his derogatory comments against women and religious sects, the Madras High Court says an FIR must be registered against K. Ponmudi for the derogatory speech against women and religious denominations. Also says, and this is the Madras High Court judge who said that if an FIR is not registered, he will have to initiate suo motu action. I want to go across to Purnima Murli, who joins us with more details. It's not just the AIDMK and the BJP. The Congresses and several leaders have also sought action be taken against Minister K. Ponmudi. But do tell us a little bit about what we're learning from the Madras High Court, Purnima.
Well, the Madras High Court, while hearing disproportionate case against Mr. Ponmudi, also referred to the derogatory statement that he made against women, but some mass outrage. And the Madras High Court had asked the DGP to by 445 say whether there have been cases filed against Ponmudi. And the DGP, in fact, the counsel representing the DGP said that there were no cases filed yet. So the court has given time for cases to be filed and action to be taken against DMK Minister Ponmudi. If no action is taken, then the judge says that he will initiate suo motu action against the minister.
Okay, many thanks, Purnima, for joining us with all those details. With that, we shift our attention to the next big story, the story that's been making headlines the last few hours. This is after the Supreme Court once again took up the new Waqf Act and several pleas challenging the constitutionality of the amended law. In the latest, we're learning that the central government has been given 7 days time to submit a detailed response on the pleas challenging the constitutional validity of the new Waqf Act. The Supreme Court resumed hearing those petitions a little while earlier and has put on hold several provisions of the recently enacted Waqf Act. But remember, this is going to be in place only for the next 7 days. It's also directed the central government to maintain status quo till the next hearing. Now, there were a few aspects which were flagged by the Supreme Court when it heard or took up the matter yesterday for hearing. But the top court now directing that there should be no alteration in the character of any of the Waqf properties, including those registered or declared under the practice of Waqf by user. Further, the court also ordered that all Waqf properties, regardless of how they were classified, must be preserved in their current state until the next hearing, which is on the 5th of May. That's when the central government will also be submitting a formal reply to the petitions criticizing it or challenging it. The Supreme Court further directed that no new appointments will be made to any Waqf board or Waqf council during this 7-day period. The centre also has come out with an assurance. It's conceded to the Supreme Court that none of these changes will be implemented for the next 7 days. Several big reactions have come in on the story as well. And there are those who have been critics of the new Waqf Act since the word go, who've come out to hail the Supreme Court decision and say that their faith lies in the judiciary next.
The Supreme Court has said that the Central Waqf Council and the State Waqf Boards will not be constituted. Waqf by user cannot be deleted. Now, there are other provisions also which we as a party have come to the Honorable Supreme Court that calling it unconstitutional. Now, whenever it will be heard, our counsel, Mr. Nizam Pasha, on behalf of me, will be arguing it. I still call this law as unconstitutional, as violating the fundamental rights of Article 14, 15, 25, 26 and 29. So our legal battle will continue.
आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट में आए और किस तरह से देखते हैं पूरे इस फैसले को?
देखिए, माननीय उच्चतम न्यायालय ने एक अंतरिम राहत दी है जो बहुत ज़रूरी राहत थी और इस राहत से हम खुश हैं, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं। देश भर से बहुत सारी याचिकाएं थी, मैं भी उनमें से एक हूं और ये बिल पूरी तरह से कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के खिलाफ है। जो अमेंडमेंट लाए गए थे वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ वक्फ की ज़मीनों को हड़पने के लिए सरकार की एक कोशिश थी, एक साजिश थी और मुझे खुशी है कि माननीय उच्चतम न्यायालय और माननीय मुख्य न्यायाधीश महोदय इस बात को समझ रहे हैं और जो उन्होंने पॉइंट्स रखे हैं उससे पता चलता है कि भविष्य में हमें और बेहतर रिलीफ मिलेगी। आज की रिलीफ के लिए माननीय उच्चतम न्यायालय का बहुत शुक्रिया। कम से कम अगले 1-1.5 हफ्ते तक सरकारी तौर पर वक्फ की ज़मीनों को लूटा नहीं जा सकेगा।
नियुक्ति के मसले पर भी रोक लगा दी गई है।
धन्यवाद। यही सारे पॉइंट थे जो हमने पार्लियामेंट में उठाए थे, जिसके लिए पूरी जेपीसी में अपोजिशन के मेंबर्स कह रहे थे कि आप इन सारे सुझावों को मानिए, लेकिन वो नहीं मान रहे थे।
आज बहुत खुशी का जो एक पल आपके चेहरे पर देखा जा रहा है।
हम फिलहाल बहुत मायूस भी नहीं थे और अब बहुत खुश भी नहीं हैं, लेकिन हम संतुष्ट हैं कि माननीय उच्चतम न्यायालय संविधान बचाने के लिए, ये हमारी जीत नहीं है, ये संविधान की जीत है। संविधान से देश चलेगा, संविधान से कानून बनेंगे, किसी की मर्जी से नहीं बनेंगे, ये सरकारों को समझना चाहिए।
I want to go across to Ananya Bhatnagar for legal understanding into what transpired in the Supreme Court a little while earlier. Ananya, the three aspects which were flagged by the Supreme Court have seen a certain reassurance from the central government till it submits a final response, which is set to take place on the 5th is what we're learning. So give us a sense of what happens going forward as far as these three aspects are concerned and whether this would be seen as an interim stay by the top court or conceding on part of the Supreme Court, on part of the central government, I beg your pardon.
Well, definitely for the benefit of our viewers, it's not an interim stay that has been put in by the Supreme Court, but assurance that has been given out by the central government, which has also been recorded in the Supreme Court's order, that the centre is assured that it will not be making any appointments to the Waqf Council or the Waqf boards until the next date of hearing, which is the week commencing May 5. Not only that, the central government also assured that any Waqf that is registered or notified by, it will not be touched as far as things are concerned, at least until the next date of hearing. That won't happen. So very clearly, it is in fact the Supreme Court has in fact asked the centre to actually respond to the kind of claims that have been made by the petitioners and the petition. The next hearing on the 5th of May would be with regards to around interim order being passed. That is exactly why we say that interim order has not been passed yet. It's just an assurance that has been given out by the central government, and the central government completely has today also told the Supreme Court that it is a legislation that's been passed by the will of the people. It's a legislation that's been passed by the parliament, and a hurry should not be done. There should be a detailed response that should be called in before any kind of a stay comes in. And the kind of worry that the Supreme Court was expressing, or the petitioners were expressing, the centre agreed that until the next date of hearing will not be interfering into this particular aspect. No kind of appointments would take place to the Waqf Council or the Waqf Board, because already there is no Waqf Council that is existing as to the current status, and as far as the Waqf Boards are concerned, most of them are having their tenure which is not ending very, very soon. As far as Waqf by user is concerned, the court has stated, the central has stated that any kind of a Waqf by user which is registered or notified will not be touched, will not be hampered, is what the centre has given as an assurance to the Supreme Court. The next hearing is on the 5th of May, and we'll have to wait and watch as to what kind of a response the centre comes up with.
Okay, so three big assurances coming in from the central government, that stands clear. One is status quo will have to be maintained as far as Waqf by user is concerned. The second big takeaway, of course, centre coming out with an assurance on how the nature of any of the existing Waqf properties remains unchanged for the next 7 days, and of course no new appointments will be made to any of the Waqf boards and councils. But do want to understand from you, Ananya, what do you make of the central government's response that's come in so far of the limited arguments that were put forth by the Solicitor General the last few hours?
Well, the central government has maintained that it's a law. It's a law. The backward class of Muslim, like the Paspanda or the...
Okay, Ananya, we don't have a very clear line with you. We will keep coming back to you. For now, let's shift our focus back to some of the political reactions that have come in. Several leaders from the Aam Aadmi Party to the AIMIM. They've come out with responses right after the Supreme Court hearing that concluded just a short while ago. Do remember 5th of May is when the Supreme Court takes this up. Next is also the date when the government will be submitting a final response. Listen into the reactions that have come in so far.
मैं तहे दिल से शुक्रगुजार हूं आज सुप्रीम कोर्ट के तमाम जजेस का, तमाम वकीलों का, जिन्होंने आज धर्म से ऊपर उठ करके हमारे लिए खड़े हुए, मेहनत की, साथ दिया इस मुल्क को बचाने का। तो मैं आज हम इस फैसले से पूरी तरह से मुतमईन हैं। जिस तरह से आज केंद्र सरकार ने आकर कहा कि जो भी हम किसी किस्म का कोई रजिस्ट्रेशन हम नया नहीं करेंगे, कोई छेड़छाड़ नहीं करेंगे, जो वक्फ बाय यूज इस्तेमाल होती आई हैं प्रॉपर्टियां वो रहेंगी, जो मसाजिद हैं, जो दरगाहें हैं, जो कब्रिस्तान हैं, तमाम ऐसे ही रहेगा। और वक्फ के जो मेंबर हैं उसके अंदर भी किसी किस्म की वो छेड़छाड़ नहीं करेंगे।
जो भारत सरकार के सॉलिसिटर जनरल है, उन्होंने अपना स्टेटमेंट दिया है कि अगली तारीख तक न तो काउंसिल में न वक्फ बोर्ड में कोई अपॉइंटमेंट जो संशोधित कानून है उसके अनुसार किया जाएगा। दूसरा बात जो माननीय अदालत ने कहा कि जो वक्फ बाय यूजर है, जो रजिस्टर्ड हैं और गैजेटेड हैं, उसको गवर्नमेंट डीनोटिफाई नहीं करेगी टिल द नेक्स्ट डेट। तो बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट बात है कि जो रजिस्टर्ड एंड गैजेटेड हैं वही सिर्फ डीनोटिफाई नहीं होंगे, उसके अलावा संशोधन के हिसाब से सरकार कार्रवाई करने को स्वतंत्र है और जो संशोधित कानून है उस पर किसी भी तरह का अंतरिम आदेश नहीं है। और अगली तारीख तक भारत सरकार को अपना जवाब और उनको जो भी डॉक्यूमेंट्स देने हैं वो देने होंगे।
And now shifting our focus to another bit of breaking news update that is coming in from Karnataka. This is yet another instance of the state government versus governor that is playing out, in this with regards to the 4% reservation for Muslims in government tenders. A day after the governor forwarded the bill to State's Law and Parliamentary Affairs Department, reserving the Karnataka Transparency in Public Procurements Amendment Bill 2025 for consideration and assent of the President of India. Karnataka government is now exploring options to notify the bill, is also going through the recent Supreme Court order in the Tamil Nadu Governor and Ravi case. So another government versus governor episode brewing in Karnataka over this 4% reservation for Muslims in government tenders. This after the governor argued that while other reservation categories have multiple castes, category 2B comprises only Muslims, and has reserved the bill on Muslim quota in government tenders and sent it to the president. I want to go across to Harish Upadhyay, who joins us with more details. Harish, you know, this kind of a back and forth between governor and state governments is only like to escalate, and this is one such example, especially ever since we heard the Supreme Court set a deadline or give a deadline to the governors and the president for deciding on any particular bill, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. This particular order of the Supreme Court is what the Karnataka government is very closely going through right now, exploring options on how they can go ahead with the amendment to the KTPP Act, which will provide 4% reservation for Muslim contractors. Remember, the governor sent this bill to the Law and Parliamentary Affairs Department yesterday, saying that the bill has been reserved for the president's assent, which means that ideally we would expect the department to forward it to the president, but that is not happening straightforward. What we understand is the state government is now exploring options on whether they can notify the bill or whether there are other options available for them in light of this particular Supreme Court order. That is something that is being deliberated right now. Perhaps in the next few days, we might see a decision by the Karnataka government that in all likelihood might end up with a direct confrontation with the Raj Bhavan.
Now, can you also tell us a little bit, Harish, about what the governor has maintained so far? You know, he's come out to say that instead of giving assent to the proposed bill, he'd rather reserve this bill and let the president have the final word on it. But what's the contention, argument-wise, really been from the governor's side?
The governor has indicated that there are constitutional complexities in this particular bill because the reservation is being given on religion line is what the argument by the governor. Although the state government, this reservation is already in place in several other aspects of governance, but that hasn't really cut ties, and the governor has said that this is something that requires the president's concurrence or president's assent, and the state government now exploring options. They are looking at what the Supreme Court has set, the deadline set by the Supreme Court, and the options before them. Can they send it back to the governor? Can the cabinet decide something? These are aspects that are being deliberated upon right now to ensure that this doesn't end up in front of the president and can be managed at the state government level.
Oh yes, the bill has already been passed by both the houses of the state legislature. This was on the last day of the budget session in the state. But thank you so much for getting us more details on this latest update that's coming from Karnataka. Heading into a quick breather with that. We'll be right back with lots more. Keep watching.
Brought to you by
возможность, и вы имеете возможность общаться между собой. Но, к сожалению, нет вашего отца с вами. Но сейчас ни в коем случае не хочу давать никаких политических оценок тем событиям, которые происходят. Но все, что с вами произошло, это большая беда. А то, что удалось вам оказаться на свободе, это результат того, что у России стабильные многолетние отношения с палестинским народом, с его представителями, самыми разными организациями. И думаю, нужно выразить слова благодарности руководству, политическому руководству ХАМАС за то, что они пошли нам навстречу и совершили вот этот акт, гуманитарный акт, вас освободили. Я вас как раз с этим и хочу поздравить. Надежда на то, что все люди, которые находятся в том положении, в котором были.
Прежде всего поблагодарить вас лично и все российское правительство.
Разумеется, мы будем делать все для того, чтобы подобные акты совершались как можно чаще, и чтобы все люди, которые еще находятся в таких условиях, в которых вы провели столько много времени, чтобы они тоже были освобождены.
Внук был в плену. У меня начался очень тяжелый период. Российская Федерация в Израиле, посол России Анатолий Дмитриевич Виктора во время боевых действий и попала в плен к нацистам. И смогла бежать.
Благодарен очень за ваши действия, личные действия, чтобы вы вышли на свободу. И я тоже хочу сказать, что для меня это очень-очень важно в этом моменте, чтобы все остальные наружники тоже вышли на свободу, потому что я знаю, как они чувствуют, я знаю, чего они, как это там, как это тяжело, как они отвечали. И для меня они как братья. Для меня как будто, когда они там, это как будто пол моего сердца еще там в газе, и как будто мне очень будет трудно вернуться к моей жизни, нормальной жизни, каждое время, что они там.
Даже во время трудностей ваша поддержка очень важна.
Действительно, будем работать обязательно.
Я вас очень прошу, чтобы вы продолжали делать все, что вы делали для меня и все этого. И я знал, что вы делали очень много, чтобы они тоже могли быть на свободе и быть счастливы, как я сейчас счастлив, когда сижу рядом с моей семьей, с моими людьми, что я очень люблю. Это для меня очень-очень важно.
Все возможно. Я говорил маме, что не только молитва, если
им возможность, и вы имеете возможность общаться между собой. Но, к сожалению, нет вашего отца с вами. Но сейчас ни в коем случае не хочу давать никаких политических оценок тем событиям, которые происходят. Но все, что с вами произошло, это большая беда. А то, что удалось вам оказаться на свободе, это результат того, что в России стабильные многолетние отношения.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned. Let's shift our focus now to the latest comment that's come in from Pakistan Army Chief General Asim Munir, who stoked a controversy by backing the two-nation theory which led to creation of Pakistan. And more worryingly and shockingly, he's also cited differences between Hindus and Muslims in every possible aspect of line, which is being seen once again as an attempt to incite and provoke masses, not just in Pakistan, but also to an extent in India. Before we talk about another bit of breaking news update that's just come in on this, listen to what exactly was said by the Pak Army Chief.
पाकिस्तान की कहानी अपने बच्चों को जो है आपने जरूर सुनानी है ताकि वो पाकिस्तान की कहानी ना भूलें. Well, our forefathers they thought that we are different from the Hindus in every possible aspect of life. Our religion is different, our customs are different, our traditions are different, our thoughts are different, our ambitions are different. That was the foundation of the two-nation theory that was laid there. That we are two nations. We are not one nation. So because of that, our forefathers, they struggled, mounted that incessant struggle to create this country. Our forefathers, they have sacrificed immensely. And we have sacrificed a lot for the creation of this country. And we know how to defend it. My dear brothers and sisters and sons and daughters, please don't forget this story of Pakistan. And don't forget to narrate this story of Pakistan to your next generation, so that their bond with Pakistan, it never weakens. Whether it is the third generation or the fourth generation or the fifth generation, they know that what Pakistan is for them. आज तक इंसानियत की तारीख में सिर्फ दो रियासतें हैं जो कलमे की बुनियाद पर बनी हैं. पहली जो थी उसका नाम है रियासत तैयबा, क्योंकि तैयबा जो है वो नबी करीम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने उसको नाम दिया था. और जबकि कुरान में उसका नाम है यसरब, या अहले यसरबा ला मुकाम लकुम फरजिउ, ये कुरान में नाम है उसका, जो आज जिसको मदीना अल मुनव्वरा कहा जाता है. और दूसरी रियासत जो है वो उसके 1300 साल के बाद अल्लाह ताला ने ये आपकी बनाई है कलमे की बुनियाद के ऊपर.
How can anything foreign be in there in a jugular vein? This is a union territory of India. Its only relationship with Pakistan is the vacation of illegally occupied territories by that country.
All right, so there you have the reaction officially that's come in from the Ministry of External Affairs. Do remember, this comes hours after the comment, the controversial comment by Pak Army Chief. This video of a public event has gone viral on social media. Clearly, Asim Munir is urging Pakistani citizens to narrate how the nation was born to their children. And he's spoken of his forefathers, but what's important here to note is the manner in which he's backed the two-nation theory and has made a clear distinction between Hindus and Muslims. The MEA, like I said, has responded. The MEA spokesperson, you just heard him say that Kashmir is the only relation with Pakistan. Kashmir's only relation with Pakistan is vacation of illegally occupied territory. Siddhant Mishra joins us with more details. Siddhant, a firm reaction coming in from the Ministry of External Affairs, and India's really not held back in calling out this kind of a bluff by the Pak Army Chief, let alone the domestic compulsions that he's facing. India absolutely clear in reiterating the official line it's toed on this aspect time and again.
Well, yes, that's right. In fact, today also, Ministry of External Affairs, while reacting to remarks made by Asim Munir, made it very clear the only relationship that Pak has with the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir is to vacate the illegal occupation. Perhaps this has been the standard position of the government of India. And in fact, many times on many occasions, Minister Jaishankar also reiterated India's position as far as Pak-occupied Kashmir is concerned. In fact, During the Raisina dialogue also, while speaking from the forum, Minister Jaishankar made it very clear that after World War II, perhaps the biggest illegal occupation has been done by Pakistan, perhaps calling on Pakistan again and again Indian side. And this particular remark, which has come from Asim Munir, has perhaps received a very, very strong rebuttal from the Indian side.
Okay, many thanks for that quick update, Siddhant. Need to put out more breaking news that's coming in. This is a CNN News 18 exclusive. We're learning as per top intelligence sources the reasons perhaps that could have led to the Pak Army chief quote-unquote blabbering in this particular manner. It's been called out by the Ministry of External Affairs, but we're learning more on how internal military tension, leadership crisis within the Pak Army could have had a role to play. Economic collapse and governance failures under his tenure is also an important aspect. Security, counter-terrorism failure, making the situation extremely bad, perhaps leading to this kind of frustration on part of the Pak Army chief. I want to go across to Akanksha Swaroop, who joins us with more details. Akanksha, intelligence here in India viewing this very closely and now trying to piece together the reasons that could have, over a period of time, led to this kind of a response from the Pak Army chief, who's been called out on multiple international forums, remember, for the manner in which he's dealt with India.
Absolutely, and he's referring to this two-nation theory that led to the creation of Pakistan back in the year 1947. It's clearly been seen as a diversionary tactic. In fact, in inputs shared by Security Affairs Editor Mr. Manoj Gupta, he's in fact referred to a leaked letter from junior and mid-ranking officers that have accused Munir of operational incompetence, corruption, political oppression, even economic mismanagement. Now, this letter in itself is testimony to the unprecedented internal rebellion within the military ranks, Christine. The court-martial at the same time of the former ISI chief, Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid, even Munir's rivalry with Imran Khan, has made his situation, back to worse. He's standing on a very sticky wicket. This divided army and the trust for institution under him is crumbling down. The military's credibility, remember, is currently under question. At the same time, we know that Pakistan's economy is facing the doldrums. It's faced by inflation. The currency devaluation has already hit 308 Pakistan rupee as compared to the US dollar. There are low foreign reserves. He's, in fact, this presence that we are seeing of him at this international conference where he was making that address is to also mobilize the diaspora community, which, as we all know, has been making huge investments, and Pakistan is in dire need of these investments. But look at the way the 2024 general elections in Pakistan panned out. He was criticized for rigging, for military interference, and Imran Khan was barred from participation, and undue favor was given to, say, fringe outfits like the PMLN. Recently, even the Jafar Express hijacking in March of 2025 by the Baloch Liberation Army has in itself exposed the incompetence and the operational incompetence of the Pak Army, which was literally brought down on its knees. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan attacks have targeted military personnel and politicians, highlighting Munir's own inability to curb terrorism. China has been publicly very vociferous in its criticism over the CPEC security failures, which is when they started looking towards Iran. That's also spoiled the bilateral relations between Islamabad and Beijing. Internationally, they are getting isolated, are under legal scrutiny. The US has introduced the Pakistan Democracy Act of 2025, which is seeking sanctions against General Asim Munir for human rights violations. Even the US and Donald Trump have been questioning Pakistan's role as far as Pakistan becoming a safe haven for terrorism is concerned. So clearly, this is also a diversionary tactic when you look at the domestic issues, and that is why
absolutely, and also the several reasons on why he brought in a religious angle as well. That's also being read into very closely. Thank you, Akanksha, though, for putting all of that in perspective. We need to quickly shift our attention to more breaking news coming in. This piece of update from Bengaluru, where a dog breeder is under scrutiny by the Enforcement Directorate. We'll try and piece that together for you and tell you a little bit about the Enforcement Directorate's investigations. But this is a dog breeder from Bengaluru who claims to have brought the world's most expensive dog, and the Enforcement Directorate officials reaching his residence now. He has purchased the world's most expensive dog, a Kadamba Mokami, a wolf dog, for 50 crore rupees. And ED searches now being carried out on suspicion of FEMA violations. I want to go across to Anshul Singh, who joins us with more details. Anshul, very interesting the fact that it's a claim being made by the dog breeder himself. Does he have documents to prove the manner in which this dog was brought by him? And what really are the Enforcement Directorate officials suspecting at the moment as they go ahead with these searches?
So yes, when the Enforcement Directorate went ahead and confronted S. Satish, who is a dog breeder in Bangalore and who claimed that he had owned a 50 crore rupees dog, and it was a crossbreed of a wolf and a Caucasian breed of dog. At that point in time, when the Enforcement Directorate team reached his home, they went through his bank account and they got to know that there has been no transaction that has been made, absolutely. In fact, when the ED went ahead and interrogated S. Satish, they got to know that this was not a dog that was imported. In fact, it was a dog
We'll try and track that further with you, Anshul, on what really happens next with the ED searches currently underway. That's all we could pack for you for now. Thanks for watching. My colleague Shivani Gupta joins you on Plain Speak up next.
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. Pakistan Army Chief General Asim Munir has shown a mirror to Indian bleeding hearts. Not by questioning anything that India does, but by revealing or rather reiterating what Pakistan's Muslims feel about India and Hindus. They consider themselves as separate and different. Well, this should not come as any surprise. This was precisely the foundation of the two-nation theory and Pakistan as an Islamic republic post-partition. The Pakistani general wants the story of Pakistan to be narrated to future generations, which makes you wonder, what are we teaching to our kids? Aman ki asha? Are the Indian bleeding hearts horribly out of touch from reality? Are they batting for a friendship that can never be? When Pakistanis are so clear about their view, why do we suffer from delusion? We'll take that to our guests in just a bit. Now, General Munir was word for word reiterating what Pakistan's founding father Muhammad Ali Jinnah had said to lay the foundation of the two-nation theory. In his 1940 speech, Muhammad Ali Jinnah claimed that it's a dream that Hindus and Muslims can ever evolve a common nationality. 85 years later, Pakistan's army chief today says Pakistanis are different from Hindus in every aspect. Jinnah maintained that Muslims and Hindus are two major nations by definition or test of a nation. Towing a similar line, General Munir says that India and Pakistan are two nations and not one, and everything, right from religion to customs to tradition, everything is different. Jinnah acknowledged that Hindus and Muslims are two different civilizations that are based on conflicting ideas. Today, General Munir echoes that their forefathers knew that Muslims are different from Hindus. Pakistan's army chief even raked up the Kashmir issue to provoke India, calling it their jugular vein. Ministry of External Affairs has now hit back. Listen in.
Our stance, government stance on Kashmir is absolutely clear. It was our jugular